I'm Brenda Roberts with KQUP TV RTN 24. Welcome to Q Up Spokane, your opportunity to learn more about what's going on in the Spokane community and how you might get involved. And my guest today is founder of the community building, Jim Sheehan, former public defender in both Seattle and Spokane. And he's going to explain how you might come down to a really nice building and enjoy it. I had already in the summertime so much fun on your rooftop.
Yep. Yeah.
So I want you to explain about how you had that vision to have a community building.
Well, when I was a public defender and I would represent people who were charged with crimes and really very, very significant, serious crimes, I realized that this was just the end of what really, we had a systemic problem, and it wasn't that these people were, certainly they were criminals, they did horrible things, but it started earlier than that. And what could we do to change? My job was to represent these people, and if you represent people, I did it holistically. I wanted to, and it wasn't just in their criminal activity, it was in all facets of life. And probably the biggest thing that they lacked, and then I realized that it was the biggest thing that all of us lack, it doesn't matter whether it is community. Our country right now, I don't think fosters a feeling of community. I think what our country does is separate us, or it wants to separate us. So I thought it would be really interesting, once I had the resources, to bring people together rather than separate. And so instead of moving to a gated community, I wanted to move the opposite way and bring down the gates, bring down those walls that separate us. And to do that, one of the ways for me was to create this opportunity for people to come together and work in a place where everybody is working for justice in one way or another. We have about 25 or 30 different organizations in the community building, and everybody in one way or another is working for justice. There's a lot of environmental groups. There's low-income housing group that does, sort of a watchdog group to make sure landlords aren't taking advantage of people.
Well, and you're also founded the Center for Justice.
The Center for Justice is there, yeah, and I founded that right afterwards. It's a nonprofit law firm that does essentially civil rights, environmental, and sort of government watchdog kinds of things, government accountability work.
Yes, we have a piece with your chief catalyst, Brian Baggs, to explain, more in detail about your Center for Justice. But like you said, it's just one of the quite a few groups that are part of there, all pretty much aimed at either environmental justice or civil rights for people. And the thing too that I want you to elaborate on even for homeowners, but especially for maybe small companies themselves, is the way that we can use materials differently. We can look at what we're going to purchase, and even the paint and the carpet and everything has a friendlier, safer.
Brenda, one of the things that we need to do is have a small footprint on this earth. There really isn't any discussion about global change or climate change. Climate change is happening now, whether or not if you read any credible science, there's no question about it. We need to change the way that we live in the world. I believe that the world is part of a universe that is alive and moving and always in flux and always creating. And we're just part of that and not a dominant part. I mean, we being the human species.
We're dominating carbon emissions right now.
We sure are. And that's because so many of us have a feeling of license that we can do whatever we want to the earth. And the earth will respond eventually.
And I think she is.
She certainly is. Yeah.
And it is part of an educational process. A lot of our generation didn't realize what we were doing as we were, younger and parenting and, doing our living, you know, just
Sure.
having that life experience. But now we're seeing the results
Yeah.
of some of the things that we've utilized, and styrofoam and things that get put in our landfill, and you know, they last 1,000 years, and that is shocking news to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. Well, and we never, you know, we weren't conscious of things. That's a key word, I think, is consciousness. It's really important that we at this stage develop our consciousness, not only in the field of environmental things within the world, but our consciousness in human relations, our consciousness in the culture, in every way that we can. And one of the ways that we've done it at the community building is to use resources that don't have a huge footprint. In other words, let's just give you an example. In the renovation of the Saranac, which is also part of the community building, it's 4 stories, and we've added a whole separate building to it. We will use over 80% less energy than normally would be used for a building that size. Now, when you think about that for just a moment, if all of Spokane, just Spokane did that, which they could do, use 80% less energy, some of that is conservation, but most of it is by design and materials that we use. It is a dramatic, would be a dramatic reversal of what's going on within the world right now in the use of resources. I mean, it's just crazy to think that we can continue to consume the way that we are. Things will just end. I mean, there's Jared Diamond in his book Collapse wrote about Easter Island, and one of the questions that he asked was, what did the person think who cut the last tree down at Easter Island? And his response was, he didn't think anything, because it was so culturally ingrained that you used that the last one didn't make any difference. It was like the first one, because it was, you know, it's just, so you develop to that way. And well, we've realized now that we can't do that. First of all, we shouldn't have ever been doing it, because it's not the way to treat the earth. But we did, and so that's over. Now we have to change the way that we look at it. And it is also part of being in community is to use materials and have a small footprint on wherever it is that we are, that we exist. And that's part of being a communal person, which I think human beings are.
I think by nature, we do want to have the fellowship of others, and we certainly want, you know, the companionship, and like-mindedness is so important. That, you know, if a bunch of us like to garden and get out and share crops and do that, that's communal living, kind of village type of living. But it's possible in an urban environment too.
Oh, absolutely.
It's possible, but you're going to have a, you know, room on the rooftop. Aren't you going to have a huge place on the Saranac building for growing things?
Yeah, there already is. There's 2 different. There's one on a top. Isabella's is a restaurant that's right next to us. That's also part of our complex. And on the roof of that is a garden with indigenous plants and flowers and an area for meeting. And then on the top of the Saranac itself, on the 4th floor, will be the entire top floor is all, or I mean the roof is all a garden with, again, indigenous plants and shrubs and so on. And what that does, it not only creates a place in the city to go to that's green and alive and creative, but it also does, you know, practically speaking, it's very, very good
Well, it
for
helps insulate
insulation
too, isn't it?
and cooling.
And any other building downtown, most of the rooftops could be switched over to that, couldn't they?
Sure, there's no reason. I mean, there's, you know, we will, on the Saranac too, we will have the biggest solar array.
I wanted to ask about that.
Yeah.
Right.
In the